I will go ahead and do the screen share. And feel free, as always, to make comments in the chat. And we will be stopping for comments and questions, just the usual. So, okay, here we go. Screen share and all right, here we go. All right, all good? Can you see that, everybody?
No, we see your email, Bob.
Sorry let me try it again here. Here we go, this should work now. All good?
Yeah.
All right, so today, so excited. Last week we talked about Marcus Aurelius and kind of like introducing him as one of the most famous Stoic practitioners. This week, Dobby and I are focusing on having you introduce you to sort of the other end of the spectrum, so to speak, Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher. And he has a lot of good wisdom that he brings to the table. And speaking about equity, and Kelly was saying this too, is that it's good to look at sort of the other end of the sort of socioeconomics level to see what kind of stuff they put into practice. And we were going to get on with that today.
Yep.
Good stuff. I mean, did you want to take this slide? Yeah.
I'll take this slide. This is kind of a refresher because now we're, I guess, about 3 weeks into this conversation, and so much has changed in 3 weeks. I thought it would be worthwhile to kind of revisit who the major Stoics were. So we've got 3 major players, each kind of representing a different area of society. We've got Epictetus, who we'll speak about today, who was a slave turned Stoic ethic teacher who never wrote anything down. He was the type of guy that would have his formal classroom sessions, but he was also the type of guy that would be followed around by a lot of young men during the time because the things he said were so provocative and so insightful. So everything that was written by one of his students. Then we have Seneca the Younger. He was a Roman senator. He wrote a lot of discourses as advice to friends and family members. And his brother is actually in Acts in the Bible. So there's a lot of historical context to not just Stoicism and philosophy, but to Rome and the time period and to what was happening. And each one of these individuals represents a portion of that, and they reflect their Stoic view from their own perspective as a slave, as a Roman senator, and as the emperor. We can go to the next one, Bob. You can take that one.
Oh, okay. All right. So kind of like the same thing we do with Marcus, some of the important years. This is just historical background. Epictetus, he was born into slavery in Asia Minor, and this was in 50 CE. And he was actually the slave of one of Nero's advisors. So not Nero himself, the emperor, but one of his like low cabinet, kind of close circle. He was born into slavery then, and he was born into it. And actually during this time that he was a slave, this is when he received his disability. He was actually injured. There's kind of like a myth that goes along with why Epictetus got injured. And the myth was supposedly he was getting punished for not doing work, and his slave owner actually started to turn his leg so that it was kind of on the verge of breaking. And Epictetus just said, just break it already, or some flippant thing like that. And he's usually viewed as sort of this kind of character, this flippant, this like kind of almost like a grump, but really eloquent in the way he expresses his ideas. So there's kind of a myth around that injury. In 68, he gained freedom. This is when he started to teach philosophy, so he was about 18 years old at the time. And when Emperor Domitian came into power, that he actually banished all philosophers from the city. There was a lot of pressure from a lot of religious sects and also Christianity and a lot of sort of up and coming religion. There was a lot of pressure to banish philosophy. So Epictetus fled to Greece, and then he started teaching there in Greece until his death, which was around 135. So earlier than Marcus Aurelius, and Marcus Aurelius was born again around 120. And so we can kind of see some overlap toward the end of Epictetus's life, but he was still older than Marcus. So Dobby, did you want to do this slide, go through the quote? A beautiful quote, by the way.
Yeah, I'll do this real quick. And I want to say something that might help you guys. You know, when we started getting into philosophy, or when I started getting into philosophy, reading this stuff is so complicated. It's so dense because the way it's written, the style of writing is so foreign. There's a lot of setup, and there's a lot of very verbose. It's just very wordy. Epictetus, though, the way he lays out what he's saying, it requires you to almost have to go back, kind of check yourself and question yourself. It's beautifully written, but it is some of the most dense and complicated but worthwhile reading I've ever done. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. And this is what he harps on throughout his discourse, is that some things are within your control and some things are not. Now, on the outset, I know it seems pretty obvious. Well, you know, it may seem obvious what's not in your control and what is in your control. But further examination, we'll see that the only thing in our control is how we judge our situations. So he is the best known Stoic teacher. He is known for helping people judge their impressions. And his work is actually extremely important in developing cognitive psychotherapy. So he was the first self-help guy. All right, that's kind of how he's remembered. He wrote the first self-help book, and it's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to Dobby that this third point, that he helped shape the development of cognitive psychotherapy, that's really our goal for behavior mods, is for students, because obviously there's a foundation of stoicism in what we're trying to do, but really what we're trying to do is trying to teach these lessons like, hey, there's some stuff that are in your control and some stuff that's not. So there's no reason for us to get overly exaggerate our emotions about those things that are not within our control. And the beautiful thing that we're going to learn today is that the things that are in our control, we shouldn't worry about them because we can do something about it, right? And so it's kind of like one of those things that if you're worrying about something, you know that you need to get that thing done, right? The people that are not worried about stuff that's in your control, that's kind of where the danger comes in, right? Because you're kind of apathetic. So this is a very active, engaging introspection and sort of observing yourself that goes into the philosophy that Epictetus brought out. Next slide. All right, and this week, and Dobby, did you want to read the quote, and we'll go ahead and watch the video?
Can you kind of get rid of these screens on the side so I can see the whole quote?
On my screen. Oh yeah, can you? Is that better?
Mm-mm.
I'm moving it on my screen. It's completely empty.
Okay, well, it's fine. I know it well enough. All right, so this is actually the very beginning of Epictetus's discourses, and he really begins by identifying that the only thing that we really have control of is how we judge what's happening, our impressions. So he says this: what then should we have at hand to help us in emergencies? Why, what else than to know what is mine and what isn't mine, what is in my power and what isn't? I must die. So must I die groaning too? I must be imprisoned. So must I grieve that too? I must depart to exile. So can anyone prevent me from setting off with a smile cheerfully and serenely? The entire his approach to everything is really from this type of viewpoint that the things that happen outside of me are what God intended to happen. It's fortune, it's life. The only thing I have control of is how I interpret it, how I'm judging it, thus how I behave to it. And so we have a quick little YouTube video. We're going to do a little quick exercise just to kind of maybe make this make more sense. Yeah, we'll make more sense. Go ahead, Bob.
Definitely. And we're going to have to, hopefully that technology works with me here. So Dobby, let me know if you can see this video when it pops up. Hopefully it will. You can see it. Can you see this?
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, nice. Okay. So this is the video, and this is in response to the coronavirus. So kind of a little background. So check this out. Let me see if I can diminish this here. And there is no audio. I apologize. So people, kind of talking in the streets in response to the coronavirus. I just we're going to kind of go through and look at maybe some of the emotions that would come from people who are trying to protest this thing that might not be in their control. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute people and see what they have to say, or if they have any comments about stuff that they do not have, that is not within their control. And just kind of based off that video, what kind of stuff did you see?
So, first thing off, Dobby, you can move the pictures. You can, on the left-hand corner, those little squares, you can move the pictures if you can't see something on the screen.
Oh,
yeah.
I just realized that, but
yeah, cool.
I've been moving it around. But the thought to your question, like, it's just like I feel like things are changing so rapidly. I just said this again to my coworkers, like, 1 minute I think everything's wonderful, I'm doing great, I'm on top of the world, I have it all organized, and within 30 seconds I'm like, something from the school, something from soccer, something from work, something from my family. I'm like, I don't even know what day it is, I don't even know what time it is. So it's like, so even though this is happening to me, and it's to me, I think it's worse because of COVID. Now we've got the pressures of our country and why people are outraged, and why weren't they outraged 5 years ago? And so you have so many uncontrollables just coming into your head, like, and trying to just get in your head when you want to be like, listen, right now I can't even ponder what's happening. And there are so many underlying things. You could take it, you could go like police brutality. I have a strong interest in mental health. So I'm like, we have a mental health crisis in our country and our police are not the ones to do it. Like, so you could take almost any sort of social inequity and start ranting on it because of what's happening. Mm-hmm. So my answer to your question is that since we've been doing these lessons, I'm really just trying to be like in the moment. I can only focus on one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. I might have a reaction to what's going on, but I can't tell you what that is right now because my brain is so overloaded with, I don't even know what half the time. I tried to tell my husband one day, like, I have nonsense stuff in my brain, so I have to get that stuff out of my brain to then focus on more important things.
Well, Kelly, here's what this is why we're doing this lesson, because in doing the exercises, you won't have to regulate what's important and what isn't important. You'll soon start to see that everything that's outside of you, and I know this is a concept that is hard to kind of understand, but it's really not in your control. The question then is, well, how do I respond to it? I mean, it's not in my but it's still happening to me, right? Well, I want. It's like I want to. It's like I want to grab you and sit you down one on one and do some things with you. But Kelly, you haven't done the mantra yet. So I'm not surprised that you're still overwhelmed by all of this stuff. It's like grapes ripen over time. You have to give yourself enough time to change your lens, because the world just keeps throwing stuff at you, new images, all the time. And so you don't have time to figure out what's important. It's all important. Or is it? So the reason that we do these little quick exercises is so you can start to train yourself to judge what you're seeing differently. But if you don't start, you can't measure any progress, and you'll always feel like this, kind of at the mercy of the news or the world or your kids or your spouse or your job. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I'm not really opposed to the mantras. It's just starting them that I haven't been able to make a routine. So I get you, and I what was I going to say? I don't even know. I do believe in like meditation or mantras, and so I just need to start it, right? I just need to start.
Yeah, starting is good. And also for me, and this is and Melissa, I think that you wanted to say something too, but for me, the mantras, they kind of, when I first started to kind of try to change sort of my mindset and these cognitive switches that the Stoics are talking about, it kind of became a reflex over time. So once you grow into these sorts of habits, you really, the mantras sort of fade out.
Yeah, they go away.
Yeah. And you just do it. And that's kind of the beauty of kind of sitting down and getting started with it. Melissa, did you have something that you wanted to say about kind of the craziness of what you saw?
I mean, it's just my experience that people react to things that are outside of their control with fear, anger, frustration, dejection, sort of thing. But that's what I saw in some of or what I saw in the video was also just, I don't know, there were a lot of images. It was kind of interesting to watch it being played without sound and without like intellectual arguments going on, kind of a thing, like listening to somebody's point of view. You're just sort of watching it unfold.
Yeah.
But I think sort of what you were talking about, though, with the things that you can control and you can't control, I struggle with teaching my children how to differentiate between those things, because I think that is that's a nuanced sort of a nuanced thing.
It is a nuanced thing, Melissa, and that's actually one of the things that sometimes Stoics, when they talk about it, they actually add a third category of some things that you have a little influence over, but not complete influence. And so that's kind of a newer idea there's a professor, Bill Irvine, that wrote The Sacred Art of Stoic Joy, that he kind of adds that middle category. And that sometimes can help, because sometimes you have a little bit more control in one situation, but and then you're a complete zero in terms of control in another. So it can be kind of hard to differentiate, for sure. Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to show another clip, and this one's a little bit more obvious. This is kind of like, this is kind of the epitome of a really good example of someone who takes that automatic response at something that happens to them and sort of goes off the deep end with it. So I'm going to show you this next clip. And it is entertaining, and it is kind of like crazy, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. So I'll let you get to it, and I'll show you that. So here's the clip. Oh, actually, we have a quote first. Dobby, did you want to read the quote before we get into the second clip?
Sure. They're thieves, someone says, and robbers. What do you mean, thieves and robbers? That they've fallen into error with regard to what is good and bad? Should Oh, let me move this box over. Should we be angry with them then, or merely feel pity for them? Just show them where they've gone wrong, and you'll see how they detest from their faults. But if they fail to see it, they have nothing better to depend on than their own personal opinion.
Oh man, there's a lot of if you're in a kind of a position of guidance, like a parent or a teacher, ooh, that really speaks to me. I always really like that quote. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it's, for me, like all week long, I've been reading his discourses, and I used to really get frustrated with, I don't know, just some of the things that people would do. It would just drive me crazy. But if you really just take a step back and look at people as people, I mean, stop with the judgments on things that they have no control over, such as their skin tone, the texture of their hair. I mean, all these other irrelevant things. And if you just look at them as individuals, as people, you don't feel angry for them because they just don't know. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
that. It's like you don't feel angry at the kid who can't bake a cake, or the chef on Master Chef who hasn't learned how to bake a souffle.
I love Master Chef, by the way.
You just feel kind of bad for them because they're hovering around the right idea, but they're not where you are yet. So if you are in a position to teach, show them where they've gone wrong. And if you don't, or if you can't, then all they have to go on is their own personal opinion. So it's our own responsibility as parents, as teachers, as educators, meditators, to show where the error is. And if you don't know where it is, check yourself, scrutinize yourself, chastise yourself. That's a lot of what this philosophy is. And I know it can be kind of aggressive, or I might come off as aggressive, but trust me, Epictetus, Marcus, and Seneca, in their writing, really put the emphasis on you. And all the responsibility is on you. And it really puts you in this position of kind of put up or shut up. It removes the excuses, and you stop blaming anybody for anything. Let's go to the next video. And as we watch the video, I want you to feel your own reaction as if you were a fan in the stand.
Yes.
Watching.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Escape this. Let's see, the box is blocking. Nope, that's the one. Here it is. You can see this? All right, here we go. So this is very short. It's like 10 seconds, but this is a play that just was made, and I'll let you watch.
I want to know your reaction. You're there with your kids.
So, and that was it. That was just a very quick, he got out and he just went crazy. So we're going to kind of break that down, but what are your thoughts about that? Or if you've had any similar experiences that you felt that way, that you were just like reacted so strongly to something?
Oh, I've totally done that.
Yeah. Yeah, Melissa, you have a story for us, or just kind of like a quick example?
Well, I mean, the thing that so when I saw that, what it made me think of was a conversation that my daughter and I have just had, because I'm going through some medication changes for my mental health. And so I've been dealing with some anger issues. And I noticed that when I get frustrated, so that I don't sort of lash out, I sometimes ball my fists and like get frustrated, and they sort of shake a little bit. And so my daughters have started doing it. And I was like, no, like, these are bad behaviors that I don't want you to emulate, kind of a thing. And so when I saw that, it just reminded me of how our children pick up on those things and sort of emulate. So that's how she's perceiving, that's how you deal with anger. Yeah. So watching a child watching that perceives that's how you deal with frustration. And so that's just it's something that I struggle with, not sort of outwardly showing the the visible frustration that I can be in sometimes.
And Melissa, are the things that are causing you frustration and anger outside of you, or are they within you?
It's a mix of both.
Mm.
Usually I'm frustrated at my own frustration. So like being angry at my own failings, sort of thing.
Are you
I see.
making progress in areas that
Oh
you're
yeah.
progress in?
Yeah,
That's good, that's
I
good.
am. I've actually, this has been a really beneficial course. I'm also making some changes elsewhere but this has sort of been congruent with those changes. So it's been super helpful for me.
Nice.
But
So you can control the things that are within your power, but the things that are outside of you that are causing you frustration and anger, can you fix those or change or control those?
no, and I'm pretty good at recognizing like what's in my control and what's not in my control, and sort of, or at least knowing, like constantly reminding myself, like this is outside of my control, like you have to let it go. And not, I am less concerned about the things that are outside of my control, but I'm really severe on the things that are within my control, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I recognize from that video, and sort of this, usually it's in with regards to fear and anger, but there's this sort of conditioned, it's almost like a biological genetic thing that, you know, all living things have, that we have the fight or flight response, we have the this sort of emotion of anger that it's an automatic response, right? And so what we're trying to do, and what Epictetus tries to do, is, and all the Stoics really, is just to kind of let that feeling sit there for a while and not act upon it until you've adequately thought about what types of actions you are about to do, whether it's something negative, or, you know, Melissa, like you said, you're showing negative things to your children. You can, what the Stoics are saying is, stop, linger with it a little bit, don't be rash, and don't explode with this emotion. You can always think about positive ways to go along with that. So that's
And
kind of the beauty there too.
And before you get there, it's also about judging what it is that's actually causing you the frustration. I mean, so we're back to judging the impression. So, you know, if I have a street and a bunch of, you know, teenagers are always driving their cars up and down it really fast, I have to judge that impression, the kid speeding up and down, and determine whether or not that's really worth me getting upset about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's literally everything. So it's, before you assent to anger, really judge what it is that's causing you to be angry. And that's what Epictetus is all about. It's stopping, taking a pause. Is this worth getting upset about? Probably not. I'm just going to move on.
And what's really cool about, and Kelly, I think you wanted to say something. What's really cool about reading Epictetus is, I think him more than maybe any of the other philosophers, he really gives examples of his own life, and he really expresses how he holds back his emotions and says, no, you're just an impression. Like, he talks to himself about how he looks at his thoughts, right? He's like, no, this is just an impression. I shouldn't I shouldn't lash out at this, those types of things. Kelly, were you going to say something?
Well, my first reaction of that clip was, wow, that guy has an anger management problem. And I think then I started getting into, so in our house, we talk a lot about feelings. We talk about that you will be sad, you will be angry, you will be afraid, you will be happy. And so we want our children to like acknowledge those feelings, right? And so I wandered into that thought, but then more recently I came into another thought where something happened at work right before COVID, like around January, February. And I was so angry. I like stood up, and I'm a very much of an open book type person. So my coworkers and my family, they know when I'm upset, and so I was like, I could throw my desk out the window. I'm so mad. And so when I get that way at work, I just have to leave my space. I have to get out. I go for a walk. I'm like, I was really mad, right? And I think also a trick that I've done in the past is when you're really mad and you just want to write it down and then just throw the paper away or burn it if you want. Like that's my anger leaving me. So I think I put into some of this already into practice. I do what Melissa was saying, like I tend to be the more disciplinary in the house, like the more of the rule person. I mean, we like to joke. I'm of German descent, and my husband's of Irish descent, and he's like the poetic Irish, and I'm the like strict German. So it works. So it's sort of funny. We joke about it, but sometimes, and more recently than not, he'll say, Kelly, like, she's 5. Like, why did that 5-year-old like make you so mad? And he's like, you're taking this like way too seriously. And so this has been happening for about a year or so, but so we've been working together, like, don't get so upset about whatever it was that happened. And I feel like I'm doing a good job at that, but sometimes even today, like I tend to yell a little bit, not a lot and not like overly yelling, but when I do yell at the kids, I will go back to them and I will say, hey, you know that I should not have yelled at you for this reason. Like I yelled because I was upset and I did this, and I'm really trying not to like yell.
Hey, you know, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but your husband asked you a really important question, and I wanted to know if you answered him. And the question was, why are you letting the 5-year-old get you upset? And I want to know, oftentimes we ask these what sound like rhetorical questions, but they're really good questions. And I wanted to know if you were able to identify why the 5-year-old was making you upset for a year, or however long you said she was continuing to upset you.
Well, so my husband's a really deep thinker as well, and he would ask me that, like, in the times where like they're not listening to my instruction, or you're right, like I don't know that I answered him. When I said we were working on it for a year, it's just something that I've seen, like I've seen the difference. I mean, the child is now 8, but I have a 3-year-old. So what I've been saying to my 8 and 10-year-old about the 3-year-old that I never used to say before, I was like, he is 3. This is the expectation of a 3-year-old. Like, we don't be upset. Like, you have to, so it's kind of like my husband's worked on me and now I'm working on the children. But to answer the question, like, I don't know that I ever answer the question. Usually the answer is like, because they're not listening to me. Like, they're not doing what I say. I've had to tell them 3 times to clean the room, or I've told them 3 times to brush their teeth, or whatever. It's usually mostly about like them
you
not
trying to control them.
Right.
Hey.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, house rules, like yeah, like, why doesn't my 8-year-old know that they have to brush their teeth at night? Like, that's been our rule ever since they were born. You know, yeah. We don't have like a total strict household, but there are certain things, or
yeah, and there it is. It's trying to control things that, even at your best, Kelly, even at your the clearest command, the most rationalistic explanation that you have, it's one of those things, like, you can only go so far as a parent. I can only go so far as a teacher to make sure that our kids know what's going on, right? And then there's some limit that just breaks away. We kind of have to be like, okay, I did all that I can. And,
yeah,
you know, it's just one of those things that comes with practice. It's really hard to, I mean, it's always a journey.
I will tell you that I let my 8-year-old now have a bedroom that looks like a hoarder, because she won't She doesn't, she does not clean her room. And I'm like, I cannot, I don't want to control this. If you like to live like this, then you can live like this. But, you know, I don't need to control that bedroom space, even though I don't like her bedroom space.
I see. Corey, did you have any, you've been kind of quiet. I didn't know if you had anything to say. Feel free to jump in. If you,
I'm more of a listener, if that's okay.
no, that's great. That's great. Thanks. We're keeping you honest, I guess. We're trying to see if you had anything to say, just to give you the floor. So.
No, I appreciate it. I just am probably more taking it all in and trying to figure it out. I'm not a fast thinker, so.
Definitely. Cool. So now for our sort of little exercise portion, I'm going to go ahead and mute some people. We are going to do a little exercise. I don't know if people got my the email that we sent out. Hopefully someone has like a little pad of paper, just like a little sticky note or something close by, a pen. We're going to do a little exercise, and it's really simple thing to do. It's kind of what Ellie said, kind of writing stuff out so that it's kind of out in the open. Here's what we are going to do. Well, I guess there's kind of a little preface before that. But Dobby, did you want me to go ahead and read this, kind of the reason why we're doing it? Okay. So kind of to pull it all together, what is the benefit? So you might ask yourself, I mean, it might be obvious for some people, but you might be asking yourself, what is the benefit of considering what is in your control versus what is not, right? And Epictetus in Discourses says, didn't I tell you that it is impossible for something to turn out well when we've properly considered it? So there's kind of this consideration. It's kind of like one of the negative visualization premeditatio malorum exercises we did in our first seminar, of we need to actually see and look within and see how much influence do we actually have on these events, right? Adjusting our expectations to what is in our control versus what is out of our control leads to empowerment. It frees you. And that's why Dobby chose that image in our opening of the chains, because it is very empowering. And to be honest, a lot of students today and a lot of parents, they don't know that what kind of stress relief and what kind of positive benefit that brings.
Hey, Kelly, I'll give real quick. This is for Kelly. This is a perfect little saying. So in the example you gave of your kids, being kids, it's not controlling your kids' behavior, even though we want to. I'm a parent too, I get it. It's about controlling your behavior instead of controlling what they're doing. Just as with Melissa, she balls her fist up when she gets mad. Well, now her daughter does. I used to be a yeller. My kids are yellers. My mom's a yeller. So since we can't control the 3-year-old, the 8-year-old, my 9th grader, totally, it's best to control my reaction to what they're doing. I am adjusting my expectations because I know the company that I'm keeping. I know the 13-year-old. I know the 3-year-old. So it doesn't make sense to continue to freak out when they break the rules. Find a different way. It will empower you, and it will remove the control that they have over your frustration.
Beautiful. Nice. Yeah, definitely. And also, adjusting expectations, and if it's out of your control, you can do something about it. Or I'm sorry, if it is in your control, you can do something about it. Because a lot of us worry like, oh, I have this thing that's in my control, but I don't really know where to go with it. But the beautiful thing is that once you've identified that thing that's in your control, it's like, okay, now we can take the steps to solve the issue, instead of just being like, oh, we shouldn't even consider it because it's something that lays outside my sphere of influence, right? And also, if it is out of your control, like I was saying, you don't have to worry. You've done all that you could in this situation, and what will happen will happen. And then we can kind of look within, like Dobby was saying, and kind of controlling how we react to the event after this situation has occurred, right?
It's not that you have to let your kids run crazy and tear up your house. It's at that moment when you correct their behavior, right? so that they don't do it anymore. So we're not going to discipline them because we're not going to punish them because we're angry at what they've done. We're going to correct their behavior so that they won't do it any further. And if you don't know how to do that, well, that's the point of getting into this way of thinking, because it puts the control back in your hands, because all you can control are your judgments and your reactions and how you respond to things. But until you have that kind of understanding that your kids are going to be your kids and your spouse is going to, and my wife is going to be my wife, you'll always fight this, God, why can't she just pick up after herself? Or why can't they just yada, yada, yada? It's senseless.
Yeah. 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 So that's kind of the prelude to our exercise. And here's kind of something that we created. So this is kind of just a normal T-chart, really simple, no rocket science as far as like what organizer we're using. And on the left, I put things in my control, and then on the right, I put things outside my control. So things in my control, like what books I read for fun, right? Am I actually stimulating my growth? Or am I just kind of goofing around with some, I don't know, some entertaining comic book or whatever? Could be an important choice. Whether I call my dad and catch up with him, something else that's in my control. Whether or not he answers or we catch each other, probably not as much in my control, right? How much time I spend working out, things in my control. What charities I choose that receive my donations, that's in my control as well. And also how much effort I put into work. These are all things that me as an agent, as an agent that has sort of an influence, those are the kind of things that are in my control. And then if we go to things outside my control, this is my teacher self talking. How my students act in the classroom. And this is, you can, Kelly and Dobby, you can even insert we insert our own children in that. And that's something that we have to do. How are they going to act? Whether my friend will call me back about weekend plans. We've all been that friend that's kind of been left and ghosted. They talk about not texting back these days, right? Oh, I try to make plans and they didn't call me back. My genetic health conditions. So some of the things that are wrong with our bodies that we inherit, we can't control that. And that's a really emotional subject for a lot of people. The impact my donation will have in those charities that I choose to donate to. I can research where my money will go, but ultimately I don't work for that charity, right? So once I give them the funds, I trust that it'll go to a good place. And then whether or not my boss will notice my effort. A lot of things that are built upon reputation are not within our controls. And the Stoics go into that a lot about reputation and fame. Dobby, did you have anything to add before we start to fill in our own stuff?
No.
All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. See if you can name at least 3 things for each side. So I named 5, see if you can name at least 3. And I'll go back to the chart so that you might be able to model the categories, and we'll give you a couple minutes to do that as the Jeopardy music plays.
Like
And the beauty about this is the more troubling things that you're kind of anxious or angry about, you might want to try to see if you can categorize those, the things that really influence how you emotionally react to things.
Hey, did I tell you guys the story that about me getting flipped off this weekend? This might help you. So I'm driving home. This guy cuts me off, gives me the middle finger, really angry, speeds off. My kids were like, oh, Dad, did you see that? Are you going to get him? And I said, did I see what? He flipped you off. I said, you mean he showed me his finger? Yeah, but he gave me the middle finger. I said, well, I have one too. I said, what he did was meant to offend me, but the offense is only if I feel offended by it. And someone showing me their finger doesn't offend me, so there is no offense. So I'm not angry. You see, something as simple as that, you control your reaction to that moment. You don't have to let anything rile you up if you don't consider it worthy of being riled up for. We have 1 minute left.
I guess now, I think I mentioned the story about getting flipped off our first week. So Dobby and I were in the flip off road rage club. We both, the people did, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's life, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess you can think of it as being thick-skinned. All right, do you guys have 3 things in your control?
I'll go ahead and unmute people. And if you want to go ahead and share, I mean, if you're willing to share it, and anything that you share, of course, is whatever you feel comfortable with. We want to make it an open space.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. And if you feel kind of nudged to share, feel free to share. I mean, we'd love to hear what you guys got.
So I'll share 2 of them. I didn't really get a lot of time, but one thing that is in my control is that I put restful, or like your rest time. Like I do a fairly good job, like knowing when it's time for me to go to sleep. And I know that I need to be, I've actually always been a good sleeper. And so I know that for me, 7 to 8 hours, I need to have that amount of sleep. So when that time comes, I'm ready for sleep usually. But things that are out of my control are my children waking me up at night. So I've always been pretty good at that, but that's just something that I even though I'm preparing to have a restful sleep, I may not always get that.
Mm.
And then something else that I'm a little bit more, I don't know, fanatical, it might not be the best word, but I have control when how to clean my kitchen. I like to go to bed at night with my kitchen clean. But I also live in a house with 4 other people, and sometimes they like to mess up the kitchen and they don't always clean it like I do.
Mm.
So so what things out of my, the things that are outside of my control are people using my clean kitchen and messing it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, did you want to share a couple or?
So the ones that I was thinking of, one of the things that I find to be most outside of my control is actually my emotions. The thing that I do find to be in control of is my logic. And I find that when I am sort of in an emotional state, what I can control is how I react to something. So like, I can't control my emotion of anger. I may get angry about something, whether it's provoked or unprovoked, as far as like with my issues. But I feel like when I do get into that situation, the thing that I can control is recognizing and then choosing to do something with it, if that makes sense. Like it's a sort of a differentiation in the process of sort of processing your emotions, I guess, in a situation. But like, like when my kids do something, I can't control that I don't feel like I can control that I get angry about something as much. So like there are times, and especially for me with my sort of depression and history of depression, like I have anger issues. And so I don't necessarily get sad, I get really angry. And so sometimes it's very disproportionate to the event. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't feel always in control of my emotion because I feel like my emotion has overcome me. And at that point, though, when I feel this moment of being overcome, like is the moment where I actively work on being like, okay, you're overcome with anger right now. Do you, and sort of like mentally go through like, do you do something in front of the children? Do you walk away? Like, so choosing my reaction to that emotion and what I do with that emotion is what I've been working on, kind of a thing.
Okay. I was just going to ask, prior to the onset of the anger, do you work on judging the situation differently?
Like qualify that.
Well, I don't know what makes you angry, but let's say your daughter tracks mud through the house after you've just mopped the floor. And that automatically sets you off usually. Before it sets you off, do you ever go back and kind of look at that situation and ask yourself, is this really worth being angry about? Have I been offended? Have I been injured? You know, things like that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I always reflect, because I mean, 9 out of 10 times, the thing that you're angry about is either completely, I mean, it's never the thing that you're actually angry about. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a, you know,
Does
going to Kelly's point, you know, most anger, I think, in those situations comes from negation. You know, you feel negated some way. And so they're not listening to you. You're trying to be helpful. You're trying to do sort of these things, and you feel negated because your advice is going unheeded, or you're sort of whatever. But to your point, Dobby, like, or to your question, I guess, I do sort of, I will assess the situations, but a lot of the times that for me, it has to do with.
No, we lost her. Where'd she go? Oh, well, hopefully she'll get back in. But I was gonna say, what's cool about, she said that some of my emotions I feel like I'm not in control over. Oh, here she is. I'll wait till she gets back in to talk about that. Well, we lost you. Here you are.
Sorry,
No, it's okay. It's all right.
hung up. No, but what I was saying was that the thing that gets sort of, will assess something, and logically, I think that's where I find the distinction. Logically, I can look at something and say this is, you know, like, this is going to make me angry, or this is not going to make me angry, or this is not worth getting angry about. But then there are times that my emotion feels like it overruns my intellect.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And one of the beautiful things that I've been kind of struggling with, because, you know, Stoicism, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, that really needs a deep rational thought about. And one of those is, what if someone has a mental illness or a psychological state that, you know, are they in control of their emotions? And what's beautiful is, I think Epictetus, and I'll have to get this, is that there's a passage where he talks about, there are some people who are afflicted or have these, I forgot what he said, what terminology he used. It's definitely not modern or contemporary, but he seems to hint at that sort of uncontrol that people feel with emotional states that are caused from mental illness and those diagnoses. So there's always there. I just kind of wanted to point that out, because that's something that I've been researching as well. So, well, everyone, that's kind of what we had for today. Wow, it is 7:59. We are kind of keeping at 1 hour. It's crazy how that happens. One of the things that I kind of wanted to leave you with is there is potential. I just talked with Miss Harviton earlier today, the kindergarten teacher, about getting these types of lessons, of course, not like we've been doing with the adults, but kind of little lesson plans and activities that show kids how to use these types of lessons. And so hopefully we'll have some opportunity to get those in aftercare. Hopefully that'll be a thing. And if you're interested in that, feel free to email Miss Harviton, because I talked to her today and she was kind of like, oh, you know, I don't know what it's going to be with COVID. And I get that, like, no one knows how it's going to be, but parental influence is always a good thing. So if you want to shoot her an email and be like, yo, this behavior mod this behavior mod parent stuff has helped me, and maybe it can help my kids with kind of a little bit more fun, you know, up and going activities. So feel free to do that.
If we can have one less angry outburst at school, then, you know, we're making a difference.
Yeah, and that's really what we're trying to do. So yeah, so I know that I say this, your time is very important, so we don't want to take any more time. Dobby, any final thoughts, or you want to call tonight?
Yeah, just, you know, stick with it. Don't beat yourself up. All of this is doable. And as far as Epictetus goes, if you can assess the situation, judge your impression before you ascend to anger or frustration, before you get pissed off, really look at the situation so that you won't have to go back and apologize. Because I know how that feels as a parent.
Mm.
You get mad at your kids and you feel like a jerk afterwards. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Get to the point of not having to apologize because you've worked on not getting angry at the things that really don't warrant anger, because you can't control a 5-year-old anyway.
Yeah, good stuff. But all right, without any more stuff to talk about, I guess we're done. Stay tuned. We'll send emails out, and we'll definitely be posting this on our YouTube page. So go ahead and search for Behavior Mods there. And if you missed something and want to go back, so that's always available.
Always.
So always. All right, have a good week and have a good weekend. Hopefully everyone will
All right, guys.
relax. So see ya. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.